Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Polyev, I mean, at least he's a change.
I think that the Trump tariffs and cost of living are combined.
I'm all for Carney. He's going to do the job.
1 week to go before Canada's federal election. Do you know who you're voting for? Plus, as Catholics prepare to say goodbye to Pope Francis, many wonder who will succeed him.
Big deal to have a Filipino Pope.
We're just praying that it will be him.
And
the Boulevard is the strip of public land between the road and the sidewalk.
on Earth Day, we'll show you how a BC landscape architect is sowing seeds of change in that urban green space.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. We're now a week away from the end of this federal election. Early voting has wrapped up, and party leaders are trying to get every last vote on April 28th. But how do you sway the person who can't make up their mind? The CBC's Katie DeRosa has more.
Buckle up. The 5-week election ride is entering the home stretch, and this pollster says a lot can happen in just 1 week.
There are really significant, huge numbers of Liberal voters in particular, but also a good chunk of Conservative voters who say they haven't locked in their vote yet.
The last 4 weeks have largely been a two-horse race between Mark Carney's Liberals and Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. CBC's poll tracker shows the Liberals with 43% support and the Conservatives trailing with 38%.
The final days of the campaign will be about motivating the voters that they have, but of course, someone could screw up yet.
The trade war with the U.S. has waned a bit, as the top issue curl says, as the cost of living remains a big worry for voters. But for people we spoke to in East Vancouver, the issue of tariffs, Donald Trump, and who is best to stand up to him was still top of mind.
And I'm all for Carney. He's going to do the job.
I think that the Trump tariffs and cost of living are combined, so it's all connected.
With what's going on right now across the border and how we're being affected, that's the biggest thing for me.
What's best for my kids, not so much about for myself, but what's best for what's ahead of us. So that would influence my decision, not so much the party.
Pierre Poilievre, I mean, at least he's a change. I don't know how many Canadians are taking the election as seriously as I think we should, but so I think we're really in a really crucial point in our history.
It was a sentiment echoed by BC's Premier.
This is the most consequential election in a generation. Really determine the direction of our country as a whole.
David Eby says the next Prime Minister faces a monumental challenge. They'll have to bring all premiers together on day one, Eby says, and have a concrete plan on free trade across Canada by the summer. As polls continue to put the federal NDP at just 8% support, even Eby acknowledged that Jagmeet Singh's party faces an uphill battle.
It's obviously going to be a challenging election for the federal NDP.
If BC's recent provincial election is any indication, there could be a strong urban-rural divide, with urban NDP ridings favoring the Liberals and rural ridings favoring the Conservatives. All that will be decided on voting day, April 28th. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The Conservative Party has now released its fully costed election platform, the last major party to do so. Pierre Poilievre is promising about $90 billion in new measures over 4 years. It also contains a tax cut and reductions in government spending.
It is a plan that will lower taxes and debt by getting rid of bureaucracy, consulting fees, waste, and excessive foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracy.
The Conservatives also pledged to boost military spending, as do the Liberals. Poilievre says he will pursue a free trade agreement with the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Liberal leader Mark Carney, meanwhile, calls the costing phantom numbers.
These numbers are a joke. We aren't in a joke. We are in the worst crisis of our lives. It takes a serious government. It takes a serious plan. It takes a plan that delivers today. It takes a plan that delivers investment. It takes a plan that grows this economy, stands up to Trump, and moves forward.
Carney says an elected Liberal government could balance the budget in 4 or 5 years. But when asked why his economic plan released on Saturday didn't mention a return to surplus, Carney says he wants to be prudent. For his part, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is slamming both the Conservatives and Liberals' plans, saying their proposed cuts would hurt the average Canadian.
You have the power in this election to use that power to vote for New Democrats to say, no, I don't want to see cuts to health care. I don't want to see cuts to services. And I certainly don't want to see private care come into this country.
Singh was also questioned on whether the NDP would win enough seats to keep its official party status. It needs 12. Current polls show its support is at about 8%. Singh says they're focused on what they can deliver for Canadians if they receive enough support.
The wealth tax is an important part of new revenue for the Government of Canada. Extraordinarily, something that has been in the public domain as a discussion item for decades. We're the first party to actually look at it.
Federal Green Party co-leader Elizabeth May outlining a wealth tax that her party has already outlined. The Greens also propose a financial transaction tax set at 0.35% for market trading and currency exchanges. The party says it expects that tax to generate over $50 billion in 2025-26 and the wealth tax to generate $121 billion by 2030. This election could change the future course of crude oil off the BC coast. The Conservatives have promised to scuttle a bill which effectively bans heavy oil tanker traffic in our province's northern waters. The CBC's Carolina DeReich has that story.
Here we have it, folks.
At a campaign stop in Newfoundland, Pierre Poilievre checks off a list of promises.
These are all the demands that our energy sector has made.
Measures he say will unleash Canada's natural resources economy. Among them, repeal the ban on oil tankers in BC's oceans. But on a visit to Terrace near BC's north coast a week later,
I can't wait to bring the incredible riches.
That promise went unmentioned. So too did his criticism of Liberal leader Mark Carney for opposing a controversial oil project cancelled years ago.
He testified against the Northern Gateway pipeline.
The fact Poilievre is bringing these topics up has Arnie Nagy preparing for another fight.
We've been through this battle since 1978, and we've come to a conclusion that it is not a safe proposal.
Nagy is 61 years old, a member of the Haida Nation, and he works with survivors of Indian residential schools. When not working, he's on the water fishing for black cod and salmon to share with local Indigenous elders in Prince Rupert. He says if oil tankers are back on the agenda, the stakes of this election for him are clear.
Our way of life, my family's way of life since time immemorial, the protection of the marine environment, the protection of our rights to go food fishing.
And he's not alone. More than a decade ago, when Enbridge first proposed building Northern Gateway to ship bitumen from Alberta to Kitimat, it met with steep opposition, protests and court cases which stalled the project until it was effectively killed by the tanker ban passed into law under Justin Trudeau in 2019. But now talk of the project, or one like it, is back, prompted in part by the threats posed by U.S. President Donald Trump and the desire to diversify Canada's trading partners. Carney says he supports more development, but as Prime Minister, he would not reverse the tanker ban. That position also held by NDP candidate Taylor Bachrach, running here for re-election.
We saw First Nations and communities, commercial fishermen and anglers, people from pretty much every walk of life come together and say they wanted to keep the risk of oil spills out of our northern waters, and we won.
Bachrach's biggest challenger in this race is Ellis Ross. The former chief councillor of the Haisla Nation and a former MLA was handpicked by the Conservatives to try to turn the riding blue. But Ross, too, once opposed Northern Gateway and warned of dire consequences if there were to be an oil spill in the Douglas Channel.
All 5, 6 salmon species will be gone. The herring that are just starting to come back will be gone.
But by 2019, his views seem to have evolved, testifying before the Senate that concerns around oil tanker traffic may be more based in ideology than actual fact. And at a public forum in Kitimat on April 15th, he said that doesn't mean he supports a ban altogether, just that he wants First Nations to be the final decision makers.
As this goes back to respecting Aboriginal rights and title, respecting the local knowledge.
pointing out that both L'Aquilams and the Nisga'a oppose the tanker ban, and he believes they and other coastal nations should have the final say. Carolina DeReich, CBC News, Prince Rupert.
The process to elect a new pope is set to begin. Pope Francis died on Monday at the age of 88. While Catholics around the world prepare for his funeral, many in BC are wondering who will succeed him. As Amelia John reports, for one BC community, their choice is clear.
Filipino Canadians in Vancouver are mourning Pope Francis. As part of one of the largest demographics of Catholics in the world, they refer to him as Lolo Kiko.
Because his name is Francisco, right? So Kiko is kind of like a nickname for him. And because Grandpa is Lolo, so we call him Lolo Kiko.
Yeah, Francisco. We use Kiko as a short for Francisco. So we call him Papa Kiko.
He is venerated, he is loved.
Filipino Catholics revere Grandpa Francis. A 2015 visit to the Philippines drew 7 million people to Mass.
So they feel a really deep personal connection. I think that also comes from his roots as a Jesuit and his, profound sort of mandate to, serve the vulnerable and the poor and really the people on the margins of society.
While reflecting on the 12-year papacy of Francis, Filipino Canadians here are also thinking about who the next pope will be. And to them, they have a favorite.
Cardinal Tagle.
Tagle, yeah.
Do you like him?
Yes, he's also a good priest.
Would it be meaningful for Filipinos to have a pope?
Oh, for sure. For sure, Filipinos will celebrate.
So hopefully we're just praying that it will be him.
Luis Antonio Tagle is known as the Asian Pope Francis. The Filipino is a contender to become the next pope and would be the first Asian pope. He's a cardinal who cycles to Mass, is politically progressive, and wants a more inclusive church. Some people in Vancouver know him well.
He's also near and dear to us because he was once the Archbishop of Manila, and he was my bishop in the province of Cavite.
There is a political process, though, to elect a new pope. It should begin in about 2 weeks. 137 cardinal electors will cast ballots in secret. A two-thirds majority of the electors, 92, is required, meaning voting can go on for days if there is no consensus.
Really, when we choose the next pope, it is really up to the Holy Spirit, who he calls for us to lead the church in the next few years.
For Filipino Canadians in Vancouver, they'll be keenly watching and praying for whomever is chosen next. Amelia John, CBC News, Vancouver.
The RCMP says a teenager has died after falling down a mountain in the BC interior. Seminar Mounties say a 17-year-old was with two friends on Bastion Mountain near Shuswap Lake Monday night when he vanished near the top of a 200-foot cliff. He's believed to have slipped. A father of one of the other hikers found him below. It's the second deadly fall in BC in recent days. On Saturday, North Shore Rescue says a 28-year-old woman was killed after she fell 700 meters down Mount Seymour. The International Monetary Fund is expecting the U.S. and global economies to likely slow significantly. The World Economic Outlook for this year forecasts just 2.8% growth, a slight drop from January before Donald Trump's global tariffs. The IMF projects lower growth for the U.S. economy and its inflation to rise to 3% this year. Its chief economist says increasing trade tensions will only fuel more uncertainty. Darius Madavi is here with our look at the weather. Another lovely day, at least on the south coast.
Lovely day for almost everybody, Dan. We've seen a little bit of cloud this morning in parts of the interior. For the most part, clear out. A little central interior, parts of the northeast, still seeing, there's some very scattered showers, high elevation flurries, and a bit of cloud. That's going to clear out into tomorrow as well. But like you said, here on the south coast, nothing but lots of sunshine. That is going to continue to be the story pretty much through this week. For a while, it was looking like Friday might see some showers and some morning rain, but now it's looking pretty dry here on the south coast. Looks like that flow is going to split. We'll talk more about that later in the show. Don't want to get ahead of myself. If we take a look at the temperatures, though, I think this is what people are going to be watching as those temperatures climb right through this week, not just here on the south coast, but across BC. By the weekend, places in inland places hitting the mid-20s. It's going to be a very pleasant week, Dan.
Sounds good. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you.
On Earth Day, one person is trying to draw attention to Boulevard Gardens. We're going to take you there next. This Earth Day, a Vancouver landscape architect is celebrating something many people may overlook, that patch of grass between the sidewalk and the street. Shivani Joshi went out to find out more.
I call this a contemplative walk.
They're easy enough to overlook. A strip of grass and flowers between the sidewalk and the street. But here in Mount Pleasant, these gardens along the boulevards have grown into a community hub.
Boulevard Garden is really any sort of garden in the broadest sense of the word that a citizen or a resident voluntarily installs on the boulevard.
Saba Formand is a local landscape architect. In 2019, he started documenting Vancouver's boulevard gardens on social media. His project turned into something bigger.
Someone found me online and they had a small grant to host these environmentally themed community events. And they asked me if I'd be interested in doing a walking tour to show some of my favorite boulevard gardens.
His walking tours draw dozens of people, from horticulturalists, curious neighbors, and newcomers just wanting to connect.
I just think it's a really important message that he's spreading about sustainability, about community.
I just want to see what the community has put together because, you know, nature and flowers and yeah, it's very therapeutic.
Like I live like in kind of a cooped up space, so I don't like get much greenery, so it's nice to like just go out.
But his neighborhood strolls are more than just admiring gardens. They're lessons in placemaking, environment awareness, and social connection.
Boulevard gardens also add to a neighborhood's character and identity. When you're replacing lawn with flowers and shrubs, you're increasing food sources, habitat.
Every dollar donated Farman collects from his tour is given to the Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House, a place that, much like these gardens, helps community grow.
The work that the Neighborhood House does is to support the community to create places of belonging and connection. And the work that Saba does with the Boulevard Gardens is a prime example.
These gardens may be small. Their impact on the community is anything but. Shivani Joshi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, most people notice prices at the grocery store going up. Costs are also rising for the Burrowing Owl Conservation Society of BC. This increase poses a serious threat to their work trying to preserve that endangered species. The CBC's Jennifer Norwell explains.
You can probably open this up. So they're just in here just for a few hours until we can release them.
Around 25 pairs of endangered burrowing owls have just been released in the interior and Okanagan. It's part of a captive breeding program run by the Burrowing Owl Conservation Society of BC.
We cover them all just to kind of keep them a little bit calmer.
Since the 90s, the group's been digging burrows and breeding the birds in hopes to rebuild the population after numbers dwindled to zero in the province.
Generally release close to 80 or 100. Unfortunately, last few years we've had to reduce how many we are breeding right now.
The reason for the drop? Increasing costs.
The food costs have gone up about 3 times. So we used to get day-old chicks from the poultry industry, but unfortunately because of bird flu, we can't get those anymore. And we do feed a lot of mice as well, and they can cost between $1.30 to $1.40. And they used to be about $1.
All those costs mean the nonprofit organization doesn't have the funding to feed as many birds as usual, especially when each bird needs to eat twice a day for around a year. But those rising costs aren't the only challenge.
Of course, climate change is our biggest problem. A lot of these birds, when they're traveling south, the habitat that once was available to them is no longer.
So these are the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Band.
Currently, the group is working closely with groups in Canada and the U.S. to establish a burrowing owl alliance. However, that could also be a source of concern given the current political climate and the impact that could have on conservation.
I think the environment shouldn't even be a political issue anymore. It should be, you know, this is where we live, we need to protect our home, so this is what we should do, whether you're conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican.
Despite numerous challenges, the group has now released another batch of breeding pairs, with hopes the burrowing owls will survive and eventually result in a viable wild population in BC. Jennifer Norwell, CBC News, Kamloops.
Stay with us. Darius will have your BC-wide weather forecast and is looking quite spring-like after the break.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
CBC returns as the exclusive media partner of the Doxa Documentary Film Festival, May 1st to 11th. Doxa presents an exceptional selection of films and events that cultivate curiosity and critical thought. Festival tickets at doxafestival.ca. And on May 15th, join CBC's Dan Burritt at the Surrey Board of Trade's Top 25 Under 25 Awards, celebrating initiatives of Surrey's youth. Tickets at businessinsurrey.com.
Darius Mandavi's here with our BC-wide weather forecast, but we're going to go to the heavens first.
That's right. We're talking about the Lyrids meteor shower. Lyrid meteor shower. The Lyrids are what we call the meteors that make impact here. You can see some of the streaks on this photo there. Those are meteors taken. There's an image taken from the International Space Station. And this is happening because we're passing through the path of the comet Thatcher, which orbits the sun every 415 years or so. And these particles move especially fast. You can see here, this is where we are right now. We're just passing through basically the path of that comet, and some of those particles moving up to 100,000 kilometers per hour. When particles that fast hit the atmosphere, it can produce a fireball effect, which means that even though this isn't the most intense meteor shower, it isn't the most number of asteroids, that is some other ones that can get up to 100 meteors per hour. This one's about 10 to 20 meteors per hour, but again, spectacular fireballs coming as a result of those things hitting the Earth's atmosphere. So could be a really great show tonight. Technically, the peak was last night. Tonight should still be great. If we take a look at our precipitation map for tonight, you'll notice lots of clear areas tonight for that meteor shower. And for the most part, we're pretty dry. Some precipitation feeds up into the northwest. But other than that, a couple showers maybe popping up in the central interior, the far northeast tomorrow, maybe down around Golden and Revelstoke. But there'll be brief showers, and then you got lots of sunshine other than that. Temperatures aren't just climbing on the south coast as well. They're climbing pretty much across BC and will continue to climb, especially in the southern interior, right into Friday. The weekend, they may start to moderate a little bit, although Saturday is trending warmer. Probably won't be as warm as Friday. Our conditions across the province tomorrow, again, lots of sunshine across BC with that slight chance of showers in a couple spots, maybe some very early morning flurries up in the far northwest before we see that transition into some showers. But again, still some sunshine. And here's our 5-day forecast. Dan, watch out for those really nice inland temperatures.
No kidding. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem as well as our website, cbc.ca/BC. We'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. See you then.